So we're learning about the creation. We're in the third class. We're kind of just feeling the water. The way I want to teach it is not to prove to you that there's a God, but to show you the way of thinking of the sages of all the generations, things that you've never seen before or heard of, but that they're there, they're part of our tradition, and that in our generation they have to come out and be understood and be inspired. They have to be. We have to soak it up. We have to get something already that's been there for thousands of years. And so I don't have a good plan of how to do it. I kind of feel my way as I go. If I encounter a little bit I encountered some very important questions last week, one of which was my use of the word energy, because I'm talking about energy and matter. And within the scientific world, the word energy is a form of matter. But for me, matter is a form of energy. And I mean energy. And I mean that's how I use the word as a spiritual concept. That the world starts at a very high energy state that's beyond matter. And what we call matter is just a lower form, what sometimes is called frozen matter. Frozen energy. If you unfreeze it, it goes back into higher levels of energy. So the whole view of the Kabbalah, of the Midrash, of the sages of all generations, was that Hashem made the world out of his speech. He brought the world into existence with his speech, which is a spiritual power which creates, but he didn't do it in such a way that's just fiat. He said, "This, let there be this." Which is what it says in the Torah, but there's an order to the way he did it. So behind the scenes of the narrative of the 6 days of creation, of the 7 days of creation, there's a oral tradition that tells us the system behind the narrative. The Torah doesn't tell us the relative weight of different words like bara, vayitzer, yatzar, va'yas, or V'asa, asa, yatzar, bara are three words that the oral tradition tells us that asa is a physical doing, yatzar is a spiritual doing that precedes physical doing, and bara is another form of creation that's even higher, and above that is emanation. So it gives us a seder, a building with which to conceptualize things. And so in a nutshell, the whole story is that the Ein Sof created a world in such a way that there would be a physical world where our souls could come down here and bring the world back up to the energy states that it existed in before there was a physical world. He made lower and lower and lower and lower levels of energy until there was the first smidgen of matter. And then over a long period of time was implanted within matter almost a need to develop itself. The physical world is called asiya, which is sometimes translated as action, sometimes translated as completion. The physical world is not the completion of the divine will in any sense of the word. It was a completion of having brought it to a certain level of hardness and concretization so that there could be a physical world where people could think, and we could say, this is a table, this is a computer, this is my body, this is, right? Because pure energy is a little bit hard to relate to. But the completion, the real completion of the divine will is to bring everything back full circle. And then when it goes back full circle, it'll be qualitatively different than when it started. because then we'll have consciousness, we'll have participated in this, in the whole process, and be privileged to exist in eternity as conscious, sentient beings, aware of the godliness all around us, and playing a positive and a procreative part in it. So he wants to give us an awful lot. So where we are now is like unconsciousness. We've been given a world that we don't even know where it came from, how anything exists truly. It's all a mystery, if we're willing to admit it. And what the sages did was they tried to show within the text of the Torah, to show a process that was behind the text, that gives us an idea. But the way they did it was with stories, because they didn't have math. They didn't have the language of science that we have now. And so one of the stories we learned was about the fifth day of creation, that there were two leviathans, two great sea monsters or sea creatures that Hashem created, where it says Vayivra Elohim et hataninim hagedolim, and he created the great sea monsters. And the rabbis say that there's a little letter missing in the word taninim, and they say therefore there were two, but then he got rid of one. And it's like it gets weirder and weirder as you go. And all of these sources that I'm bringing here about day 5 were in order to break through the story form, the outer form, to get to what's being told to us on the inner level, which is the energy level of the Torah. It's there. In every generation will have a different way of communicating, of understanding it, a different mindset. That's the way he runs history. We have a mindset now, because we have scientific knowledge, because we have technology, we have a different mindset than we ever had before. Now, I want our mindset to meet the ancient mindset, and the confluence between the two is dramatic, is explosive. It means that science is meeting the deepest secrets of creation that were revealed to the prophets, and that when that happens, that's the messianic confluence. That Mashiach is the confluence of ancient wisdom, that is prophetic wisdom, with the most advanced theories of science. So my attempt here is to present the midrashic and then to go within it and to see what's behind it. Last week we made a little headway. Then I went into this difficult text at the end, which was only in Hebrew. Since I had shared it in the past with groups of men 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, I haven't done it in 12 years. But still, I thought I could do it, and I realized today, ridiculous. Don't even try it. I translated it. It's all in English now. And even then, it's going to be challenging. So let's go to page 4 for a moment. They're the same. The page 4 is all the same in all the different things you have. And these new ones, it's Hebrew. The direction is Hebrew. I realize that. The direction is that the pages start here and open this way. But that's just the new one. Open right to the left. Okay. Page 4. Just for the terminology, the bottom of page 4, Baba Batra, 74b, Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, all that the Holy One created in his world, he created male and female. So now we have this terminology called even Leviathan, Nachash Bariach, the straight serpent. Leviathan, the straight serpent, and Leviathan or Leviathan, Nachash Aklaton, the coiled serpent, which is literally those 6 words, Leviathan, Nachash Bariach, and Leviathan, Nachash Aklaton, very, very strange words. They're in Isaiah 27:1. And they were created male and female. Had he allowed them to mate with each other, they would have destroyed the entire world. Now, up at the top, I explained in the Rashi at the top what it means that the world would have been destroyed. So let's go there for a second. I'm sorry. Gigantic fish that inhabit the sea. This is Rashi up above on the page. And in the words of the Agadah, which is the Gemara that we're actually looking at, this is Baba Batra 74b. This refers to the Leviathan and its mate, for he created the male and female. He slew and salted her for the tzaddikim in the future. Why? If they would have born offspring and increased the world, my addition, as he wanted it, which is a lower dimension where his light is more concealed at every successive stage, could not have existed. So his desire, what's being implied here for us behind the story level, is that he wants to bring about a physical world where a certain type of free will can exist that can't exist in heaven, and that he would send our souls down here. So stage 5 is before stage 6, which is the 6th day of creation. Stage 5 is still a spiritual, what we call a spiritual dimensionality. It's not physical world yet. The Leviathans are not physical. And the meaning of the metaphor that if you would have had them mate with each other and they would have born offspring and they would have destroyed the world because the world had been too much light, it wouldn't have been allowing a lower dimension to come into existence. The metaphor is that he had to separate the male and the female and prevent the male from connecting with the female, which would have made, which is the idea of the higher level of heaven shining down full force into the lower level. It won't allow the lower level to exist as such. It'll pull the lower level up to it. I'll explain that if it's not clear. If the higher level of existence, like the sun, would come too close to us, for example, it's not a perfect example. If we'd get too close to the sun, we'd be burnt up, right? Hothouse, the hothouse effect. If it gets too big, as the scientists say it will, it'll get very, very big before it gets small, and it's getting bigger and bigger, so Venus will completely burn up and everything, and the Earth will be singed, let's say. It means to say Earth life can't exist when that higher level of energy becomes too close for comfort. Right? When we're talking about spiritual worlds, the higher worlds are very careful not to impinge upon each lower dimension. Hashem wants a certain ladder effect here of lower dimensions. So if the higher world is not careful, if it reveals too much of itself, the lower world can't maintain its integrity and it gets subsumed. What will happen in the positive scenario is that when all the lower worlds do exist and there's a physical world, and Am Yisrael and mankind begin to wake up to the spiritual otzma, the power of godliness, then the lower world will also be subsumed in the level above us, but not in a destructive way, because we'll go up there and we'll maintain integrity, maintain individual integrity, and then we'll go up again. So the going back in the way that Hashem wants it to do is that when we prepare the vessels down here of consciousness and of awareness, we see through the disguise of creation to the godly power that's behind it, and we fulfill the will of the Creator. That allows us to go up into the next dimension with everything we have. We don't get destroyed. We don't go into nothingness. How are we doing?
Isn't that the same principle then as when in this physical world, when we also make ourselves into spiritual beings, so that when we go to the next world, we also identify with
exactly
spiritual? So it's like it's a different level of
it's a different way, a different aspect, because Judaism, Torah, the deeper teachings is that when we refine ourselves, and zikuch is a very important word, to refine our physicality, to refine our consciousness, and to be humble and righteous and good and embodiments of godliness, we become multidimensional. We become interdimensional. Moshe Rabbeinu is an interdimensional consciousness. He's not limited to this world anymore. The prophets and the sages were interdimensional. The Ari, he went every once in a while, he went upstairs. And he came back and he said, this is what I learned. It would take me 80 years to tell you what I just learned in the last 15 minutes, but I will try my best.
Wow. Why do you go such great lengths to talk about the Leviathan? That's what I don't
Say that. What's the
Why to
question?
go such great lengths to talk
So
about the
about the
Leviathan? Like, it just seems to complicate it so much and make it so esoteric. The way you're explaining it makes sense, and then you read this thing and it just sounds like, I don't know.
So last week we skipped over the Gaon of Vilna. It's a kind of an important thing, but I'm going to keep with what we started last week, which was to go to page 10. And what was page 10 last week, which was all Hebrew, after the first paragraph on page 10, what was pure Hebrew beyond that is now little tiny Hebrew with big English. With Hashem's help, who is this? We showed his picture. Question.
I had a thought while you were talking, but
I hope so.
So you said something along the lines of had the Leviathan made it,
That's what the Talmud and Rashi is bringing from the Talmud.
right? So had they had made it, the whole world could have been destroyed.
The world down here that he wanted, the lower dimension that he was specifically created on fifth day.
So the question that I had, does that potentially mean that free will was created on that day? For the reason that, because if Hashem had left it out of his control and said and given the earth the opportunity to be destroyed, that means that the world was not in his hands anymore. And so therefore the option that it could have been destroyed means that there was this idea of like choice that was not of his own. Does that make sense?
The whole story here is to bring about a world where there can be
Free will.
free will. It's a continuing story from day 1 to day 6, including day 6. It's all inclusive. So day 5 is a piece of that bigger picture. And probably what we're going to have to do is finish day 5, go back and do a few other days, sit back and look at the whole thing again and say, oh, that's what I was getting at. So it's definitely, free will is a very important component here, right? And exactly to define it. What does he mean by free will? Because it's a whole subject, and I don't want to even open my mouth about it right now. I'm asking you to come with me on a journey. This is Rav Shlomo Elyashiv, 1841 to 1926. Rabbi Elyashiv's grandfather.
He's buried here?
He's buried on Har Zeitim. Okay. So he says like this. We're starting again in the English. Behold, of the Yehudim, the promised destinies, or the destined promises.
Is that Yehud? Like
Yehud.
Like a Yehud?
Yehud is a destiny.
Everybody has a Yehud.
A Ya'ad is the destination.
Okay.
It has to do with Va'ed, La'olam Va'ed. It's something in not only in the short term, it's a long-run destiny. Of the destinies that have been promised to us, that are being held in reserve until Yemot HaMashiach. There's a lot of Hebrew in here, but it's transliterated. They're being held in reserve until Yemot HaMashiach, and they're mentioned in their numerous places and teachings of our sages. Among them are Leviathan, Behemot Behare Elef, translated literally. We'll see what Leviathan means. He's going to take apart the word itself. It comes from Levi, or Levi and Leviathan share something. And the word Yelaveh imi ishi, my husband is going to accompany me, Leah said about Yaakov. Yelaveh, Alavaya, right? So this word means accompaniment and bonding. So Leviathan is a concept of bonding. He's going to get to this. And so we'll abstract it out of its fish context into its conceptual and spiritual meaning. So Behemot Bahare Elef is the animals on the 1,000 mountains. Hare Elef. And of course, as I said last week, in my opinion, Alps comes from the Elef, the word Elef, 1,000, because the Alps are many, many mountains. And it's also called Shor Habar, the wild ox. And Ziz Sadai, which is Tarnagol Habar, the wild cock, the wild turkey. And so in Psalm 50, I bring you some verses here. In the Hebrew above, in the tinted, the shadowed or the shaded thing, it says, Kikol Chaito Ya'a, Behemot Beharare Elef. I'm reading in the Hebrew in the shaded part. Yadati Kol Of Harim, Viziz Sadai Imadi. And then the Targum, I won't read right at the moment. And in English, you have verse 8 of Psalm 50. I will not admonish you for not sacrificing your sin offerings, or because your burnt offerings were not brought before me. I do not need to take bulls from your house, or he-goats from your fold. For every beast of the forest is mine, as well as all the cattle that could graze on 1,000 Alps. That's the Behemot, Baharare Elef. I know, I own all the birds of the mountains, the Ziz Sadai, and the wild beasts of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not ask you to feed me, for the whole world and everything in it is mine. Do you think that I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? The true sacrifice of Elohim to Elohim that sweetens all judgments and harsh decrees is thanksgiving, fulfilling the vows of heartfelt service and gratitude that you have made to the Most High. So that's my translation of Psalm 50, part of it. An attempt. Everything is an attempt. We can't always do justice to the beauty, the depth. We try. So he's bringing all these three animals. He says all three of them are mentioned in numerous places in the Midrash. They thus constitute three species, whatever maybe the wrong word, constitute, but there are three species here: Leviathan from the aquatic creatures, Shor Habar from the mammals, and Tornagol Habar from the bird kingdom. Right? That's clear that there is some kind of an order here. Mammals, birds, and fish. They're all part of the banquets of which the tzaddikim will partake in the future during the Messianic era, Davka. There'll be banquets. Some of the sources before this is page 10, some of the sources before this, from Psachim 118, there'll be this banquet, and all the other sources that are back in the other part of the book, worth looking at. So, but the simple reading of the Talmud is that there'll be a little bit of a feast, and we don't know how long it'll go on. So the Leshem, that's what we call him, Rabbi Shlomo El-Yashib, the books he wrote are called the Leshem Shvov Achlama, which are 3 stones in the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. So the Leshem says that these will go on, these meals will go on throughout the entire Messianic era, but not during Olam Haba. For regarding Olam Haba, the world to come that follows after Yemot Mashiach and that begins officially with the advent of the 7th millennium, the prophet said, no eye, not even the eye of the greatest prophet has seen it, O Lord, but yours. So we can't see what's beyond the Messianic age, which is going to take place at the end of the 6th millennium. We're now in 5777. That means we've gone through more than 3/4 of the 6th millennium, and we're in the last quarter of the 6th millennium towards the 7th millennium. It's a very important time, according to all our sages. So 5777 means to say that after 250, after 500, 750. So we're 27 years after 1990, which was 5750. So interesting. We have a lot that we've written about this. But the point is that Yemot Mashiach has to happen somewhere between now and according to some, we are in it or we're in the beginning. There's different words that are given to describe our situation right now. Ikvot Mashiach, the footsteps of the Mashiach, the Chevle Mashiach, the birth pangs of the Mashiach. Right? We don't know what's in store for us. We see the whole Middle East, the whole world going through fantastic changes. We don't know where it's going. We feel sometimes like cogs in a wheel or corks on a stormy sea. What these teachings are trying to give us is not only free will, but how to use our free will in order to direct the boat on the stormy sea, and to make it and to get it where it needs to get to, the destination, the ya'ad, right? And to bring history and all of mankind to its destined rendezvous at the end of history with God. That's what the Jewish people are made for. So when the Jewish people lose their steering, they have steering committees. They don't seem to be steering very well. When they lose their steering, like the whole of mankind is without a captain. We're not here for ourselves. We're here to bring all of mankind up to another level. And when we don't do it, it's really tohu vabo v'choshech al panei tehom. And where's the Ruach Elohim merechevet al panei hamayim? So the Torah, like Rabbi Nachman always says, the Mashiach will have to read Likutei Moharan. Why? Because Likutei Moharan tells the Mashiach what the world situation is and what he needs to do to fix it. Well, in general, that's what the Torah is. We come into the world, we learn a little Torah, and if there's anybody, okay, there's Torah and there's Torah. There's Torah of, here, learn the words, here, learn this, learn how to say this, okay, now here's some concepts, and here's the mitzvahs and everything. But what it's really about, right, it's very difficult to communicate. But it's so important to do so that we have to go out on a limb to say what needs to be said and to know and to understand what needs to be understood. So I'm just doing my little part here. So the Yemot HaMashiach, we don't know what's beyond it. We know that there has to be a time at the end of history called Yemot HaMashiach when there'll be major qualitative changes in our lives, when nature and miracle will start to dance with each other. Nature will be interrupted by miracle, and more consistently until nature phases out and miracle, what we call now miracle, right, phases in. It won't happen overnight. Hashem is going to give us a chance to understand. If he does things too fast, then we can't register it. So he's going to allow us to get it. We always will complain it's not fast enough or this. Right? Hashem's plan is to allow us to come into full consciousness. Our job is to align ourselves with that plan. So again, the Messianic era is what we have a time when the sages said that there'll be these meals that are described in Baba Batra 75, where we'll have the flesh of the Leviathan, and then we'll make a sukkah out of the skin, and then we'll put the rest of the skin, and the rest of the flesh of the Leviathan will go to the Shvakim, to the Shuk of Machane Yehuda, and go to the whole world. They're already foreseeing an international economic system. And then the skin will be a sukkah, and then there'll be so much left of this incredible thing that it'll be rolled around the walls of Jerusalem, and it'll shine from one end of the world to the other. Which the Gaon of Vilna said, we skipped over it, but if I had been created only to hear this, to understand this Talmudic passage here about the skin of the Leviathan, and that's why the top of the page says or to or to or, light to skin to light. So he said that is going to be the fulfillment of the full circle from Adam Arishon becoming from energy to matter, is becoming from matter to energy. So that's why he put so much store in these so-called stories of the Talmud, because they were giving over important information. No eye has seen it, O Lord, but yours. That's the Olam Haba. But in the Messianic age, we know quite a bit, but we know it only through stories. And now that we can learn those stories in a deeper way, because of the scientific knowledge that we have, so Hashem is allowing us to come to the next level of knowledge. All three of these Yehudim, these promises, are from the Sod of the Etz Chaim, meaning to say that they're all part of that which was lost to Adam on the sixth day of creation. These three animals that will be eating. Then we'll get to exactly how it's going to be. It's going to be literal eating, physical eating, or just spiritual eating. What's the difference and how's it going to happen? He's going to address that. And so is the Rashba, who lived before him. That's what they're going. That's where they're going with this. Is we're moving from matter to energy, but it's going to be done in such a way that the meals will be done on both levels. But I have to go with the text for the moment. That will come in shortly. So he says, each one, all of these Ayudim are part of the mystery of the Etz Chaim. It's just that now, since the Chet of Adam, each is still partially infected with an aspect of Etz Hadat. So the system of Torah is Etz Chaim, Etz Hadat, and this is going to say in a second, as it is, as we said above, the Etz Hadat comes from and is the lower extremity of Etz Chaim. On the fourth day of creation, we mentioned the sun and the moon. We mentioned that the moon was told to become small and the sun was placed in a sheath, in an orb. It was preventing the full light of the sun from shining and mating with the moon. The fifth day, it was the prevention of the male Leviathan from mating with the female. The sixth day is the preventing of the Etz Chaim from completely irradiating and lifting the Etz Hadat up into itself. Because the Etz Hadat is a fallout, is a collapsed level, a broken level, a fragmentation of Etz Chaim. So I'm trying to give you the ideas behind the words. I hope that it's helpful somewhat.
Can I ask one question?
Try.
So you're saying that the Leviathan, because it's a mouthful, that whole thing that was bad, he's turning the whole thing into good by turning it around? Do you know what I'm saying?
Good try.
Do you know what I'm saying? You know, it's like it came out and it was going to be bad, and so he's actually turning the whole thing around in order.
No, the godly plan is all good. Everything is for the good. Even when he makes a lower dimension, and it's going to be a little bit harder for us to see him, it's all ultimately in order to give us a better chance at growing to our greatness. So it's all a good plan. The diminishing of the light of the higher level, so it shouldn't shine directly down and overwhelm the lower level, is a principle. I'm just asking you to just accept it for the moment. So the Etz Chaim on the sixth day is going to be in the same position as the male Leviathan is on the fifth day, and the sun on the fourth day. And we see that, again, metaphors are such that they hide, but they also help you see. Like clothing hides the body, but it allows me to reveal myself before you in a way that you can handle, and I can handle you. Clothing helps us. So clothing of ideas is what the sages were into. It's called halbasha. They were in the garment industry. They were always making clothes.
That's where it comes from.
Right? The Jews are always in the garment industry. Right. All of Kabbalah is based on orot, the kelim, and the kelim are sometimes called levushim, garments.
There's still a significance in the fact that they chose a fish as this metaphor. You don't have to get into it now, but I'm assuming there was. It's not just any animal they picked to be the metaphorical animal like this. But it's not for now. It's okay.
Well, you see, I'll tell you a secret. In the desert, when we were there in the desert, there was a column called an Amuda Esh. And we translated the column of fire. And there was a cloud, which we call Anan HaKavod, a cloud of glory. So since it's called cloud, and we know that modern clouds look like the clouds in the sky, we naturally, unless we're told, be careful, we naturally think of the clouds of glory that are somewhat like that. And we naturally think of the pillar of fire, because it's ash, but the Torah is working on a number of levels. So it wants us to say, hold on to the word esh and go up with me. Don't pull it down to you.
Okay.
Use esh.
Be in the way the word is, however it's spelled or whatever the letters are that comprise it, and be in that and not in
They're energy frequencies, right?
Good. I'm good.
The angel that right, okay, so I hope that was helpful. All these things together can drive you crazy or can set you free. Okay.
But also
So-
some sages are saying it's not a metaphor, but it's really like at the end, when Mashiach will come, we'll have this big banquet and feast where like the flesh will be served to the Tzadikim, and say it's not to be taken as a metaphor.
Well, he deals with this. I'll jump to it if you want. He deals with it on page 11. But he builds up to it. This is a difficult text, granted. But once you read it once, and you read it again, and you study it, you see that it's a very coherent, cohesive thought process that he's giving us. I don't want to skip. I'm going to keep with my intuition. So we just try to do a general pullback from comparing day 6, day 5, and day 4, and using the word metaphor in the meantime. At the end of the paragraph that we're in right now, it says, they will all be consecrated fully to Hashem. When during the Yemot HaMashiach, these three, which are presently in a lower form and are prohibited to us. We can't eat the Leviathan, we can't eat the Behemot Bahare Elef, and we can't eat the Ziz Sadai, whatever that means. We can't eat them, they're not kosher, whatever, in the vernacular. But in the Yemot HaMashiach, there will be, because they'll be lifted back up into rectified state of Etz Chaim. They will all be consecrated fully to Hashem to eat to satiation that which is hidden for the tzaddikim in the Yemot HaMashiach. Now, the next paragraph. Yes.
It just seems that I understand like the Eitz Hadat is connected to Eitz Chaim, but it seems to me if you're going to be a mensch, your whole thing is to become conscious, and isn't that that? And don't you need that in order to really live? But why is it?
Of course. If you read all of my books, which is 75 volumes only, of thousands of pages each, you'd all know the answer to what you just said. But I'm not going to make you do that. Okay, so dot has different definitions by us. In the specific case of Etz Hadat Tov V'Ra, the secret of the problem of the dot Tov V'Ra is not the dot itself, it's the Tov V'Ra. It's the intermingling of good and evil and good. And when that happens, we lose dot. So in a sense, it's called Etz Hadat. It's a join in the sense of joining good and evil, and making a mixture that prevents me from being able to distinguish. And it's in my book, Spiritual Technology. It's a very first chapter, second chapter maybe. It's very, very important to define dot, the different meanings of it, of joining, and also the ability to distinguish. It's two very interesting definitions of dot. To have dot is atah honen la'adam. Dot is you give man the ability to distinguish. And that's why we make havdalah and dot. Im en dot en havdalah. Or havdalah minayin. It's a good more. But then on the other hand, Adam yada et Chava. And Adam knew his wife, and knowing is intimate knowing. So, and it's a joining and a combining. So it's very interesting you have there. But here the problem is not the dot per se, it's the Tov V'Ra. There's nothing wrong with dot. It's how you get it. And the Etz Chaim is a higher level of dot Elyon. It's not fallen dot. So there's a lot of ways to answer you. We're going to the next thing. The next thing, in order to understand it and make it easy, I might even skip over it, is that there's a street in Jerusalem that changes names around 7 times. Picture the street that we call King George. If you go towards Geula, it becomes Yeshaya. It goes down, it becomes Yecheskel. It goes down to Shimon HaTzadik. If you come back on the other side of Yafo to King George, it becomes Keren Kayemet, then becomes Keren Hayasod, then becomes Emek Rephaim. It continues on. It's a fantastic metaphor for what he says here, is that there's a single light that comes down through creation from the very top, from the Ein Sof itself, and it comes in all the way as what's called a Bria HaTichon. It's a phrase that borrowed from the Mishkan, that there was every one of the Atze Shitim Omdim, all of the wooden columns of the Mishkan had a hole through them, and they put a pole through it that actually bent and maintained itself throughout the entire thing and held the whole thing together. And that's called the Briach HaTichon. Today you have Rav Briach, which is doors, and they have a way of closing a door that's stronger because it goes, when you turn the key, it goes whoop, whoop, right? It goes into a way that it's, so the idea of Briach HaTichon is that which passes from one end of the universe to the other, and it changes names. It's a very beautiful passage here. It's on 11, and he gives you the different names, the Kabbalistic terminology. First of all, stand 10. I skipped a little bit too quickly to what I was going to say. Okay, so the sod of the shoresh of the Leviathan. The meaning of the word Leviathan comes from Levi. The concept behind Leviathan is dot. So you have a word there that's bolded, which is dot itself. Dot is consciousness. As per Zohar Shemot, and especially Zohar Shlach, on the verse, and Ish from Beit Levi went and took a Bat Levi, right? Amram remarried Yocheved. Beit Levi is the Zohar says, Beit Levi is the place where Chochmah Ila'ah, which is the concept of the sphere of Chochmah, which is also called Abba, and the Nahar, which is the river, which is another code word for Ima, say father and mother, Chochmah and Bina. So Levi is the place that joins Abba and Ima. Chochmah and Bina are the right brain and left brain, and the midbrain is called Dat. And also it comes up into here, into the back of the brain, and then goes back and spreads down into Dat Tachton, which is the entire the nervous system. But it roots up, and it's in the middle between the two hemispheres in terms of our physiology. Beit Levi is the place where Chochmah, which is Abba, and Nahar, which is Ima, are joined, never depart. The Leshon comes in between here in the brackets, between the Zohar, and says the word Levi itself, the shoresh of Leviathan, Leviathan, means connection, accompaniment, as in, this time my husband, Yelaveh. In Hebrew, it's Hapam Yelaveh Ishi. Yelaveh. So my husband will accompany me, will connect with me. The Leshem says that this refers to Dat that joins Abba and Ima. For by virtue of Dat, they are called Train, Re'in, Dila, Mitparshin, two friends who never part. So physically even, the right and left hemispheres, the two modes of thinking, very different. A whole book about it, in which they put a pink cover on it this time. All about right brain and left brain and how it's part of our tradition from ancient times.
It's a great TED talk on it.
So right brain and left brain are always working together. You can't, only if you like artificially say, well, this is a right brain operation, but there's no such thing. Really, they're always working together. They're two friends who never part. And that's how they're seen. That's a quote from the Zohar, a very beautiful quote, that Abba and Ima never part. They rest at the Yud and the He of Hashem's name. The Vav and the He is the first possibility of separation, to create a world where there can be a lower dimensionality. So the idea of the lower He of Hashem's name and the Vav, the two lower letters, are similar to the sun and the moon. Is that the Vav is prevented from shining full force into the He and bringing them both up to the level of Yud and He, which will be in the future. It's hinted at in the verse in Zechariah, Bayomahu Yihiyeh Adonai Echad Ushemo Echad. The word Yihiyeh just means as a verb. On that day, it will be that Hashem is one, or it will be revealed that Hashem is one and His name is one. But the word Yihiyeh is the hint that instead of Yud-K, Vav-K, it'll be Yud-K, Yud-K. Because the Vav will be lifted up to another level. In the meantime, the same dynamic exists between the sun and the moon, the male Leviathan and the female Leviathan, and the Etz Chaim and the Etz Adat. The system is beginning to emerge. Is that the Vav is prevented from completely connecting with the Hay, in order to create a lower world where we can do what we need to do. And then we become instrumental in joining the two, which is why we say before every mitzvah, L'Shem Yihud Kucha Barichu Ushchinte, for the sake of the joining of the Holy One with his indwelling presence of heaven and earth. Then when we do it, that's a different story. It's not that it's done for us and we just exist unaware. It's we become aware, proactive participators in the process of the rectification of creation, of the joining of the Vav and the Hey.
Slicha, is that tshuva? Is that part of the tshuva process?
For sure, it's called tshuva, is teshuv Hey, is returning to Hey. Returning to Hey into full relationship with the Vav.
The Vav is also the letter of hook. It's
The
such a
Vav is
cool
the
thing,
hook.
the Vav is the hook.
Right. The symbolic language that we're using, again, can drive people crazy, or can become a system, it can become a series of wows for you. It's meant to be that begins to show the system behind the Torah is a wondrous system, but it's a right brain system. There's no way to communicate it except each thing in its time. 4th day, 5th day, 6th day, Yud K, Vav K, and as you grow and as you develop it, it starts to become one complete unified system, and it's no longer this or that. It's the same essence being manifested through different metaphors. So it's called, okay. So we're in this paragraph here where the Leshem said that they're called two friends who never part. Now the Zohar continues, Mi Beit Levi, and Ish went forth, Mi Beit Levi, for Abba Chochma bestows to Ima Bina via its creative channel, which is called Levi, Leviathan. And in this way brings the greatest joy to the world. It's definitely enigmatic here. I'm not going to even try to explain. I'm just putting down what it says. This is the meaning of the verse in Psalms. You, Hashem, formed the Leviathan to rejoice with it. The Leshem continues, Mi Beit Levi. This teaches us that the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu, because the birth of Moshe is from the reunion of Amram and Yocheved, right? So that's implied. So he's just now bringing it out. This teaches us that the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu is from that place, Beit Levi, Leviathan, that joins Chochmah and Bina, is from that place that was established to bring joy to the world. Again, this is Dad. Dad is the joy of the world. Dad is consciousness, the level of Bina, the world to come. This is the meaning of you, Hashem formed the Leviathan to rejoice with it. We thus conclude that the Leviathan is the mystery of Da'at that joins Abba and Ima, and it's from there that the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu derives. He's still building for us. It's a difficult text. It's like, don't worry if you don't understand. But we've gotten to Moshe Rabbeinu. We've gotten to the word Da'at. We've come out of fishland into a whole nother levels, and it's going to get better. Now see, it is known that the sod of Da'at, the mystery of Da'at, of consciousness, is drawn from a very high and exalted level above. And now he's going to mention words that are not understandable to us. So I'm going to read them, though. We have in Kabbalah a thing where we actually speak about the higher spiritual worlds using the physical body of a human being, the model of a physical body of a human being. And this is very similar to what the prophets did, that they said, I saw God as a king sitting on a high and exalted throne. And then that's Isaiah. And Isaiah says in other places, El mita demuni. Who will you liken me to? Hashem says. Amar Kadosh, says the transcendent one. You can't liken me to anybody. And yet the prophets go and liken Hashem to all kinds of things. And then he says, you can't liken me. And then they go and they liken him again. Right? We're allowed to do that because the rule that you cannot liken me to anything is so strong that even when they liken him, we know that it's not literal. Right? So here also in Kabbalah, it goes to very great extremes of using physical metaphor to describe high spiritual things. It may not be so exciting to you to read this, but it's a translation of ideas that are part of our tradition. So Dad is drawn from a very high and exalted level above, from the parting of the hair of the scalp, which is long and white. Now that's an attempt to translate, but it didn't really do it very well. In the middle of the head, and with the head of what? We're not being told what. Which is called Nachash Bariach. It's using the word Nachash of all things up there. I'm not very happy with what I did here. I'm going to finish the paragraph and then see if I can fix a little bit. This itself continues downward in spiral fashion to encompass the entire head. This is Nachash Akalton. So there's the straight Nachash, which is somehow to do with the white on the top of the head. I don't know how. And then there's the curved, the spiral Nachash, which is mentioned, both of them in the Isaiah 21, 27, and in the Gemara, that the idea of rods and cones, of circles and circles and ones, zeros and ones, right? The binary system of creation, of positive and negative, of male and female. So we're actually really getting down to a very fundamental level of reality, but it's still wrapped up in metaphor. This itself continues downward in spiral fashion to encompass the entire head. This is Nachash Akalton. They are respectively male and female, for male is straight and female is circular. This is the meaning of the Gemara and Baba Batra that we saw. Even Leviathan, Nachash Bariach, and the other one were created male and female. They are the mystery or the sod of the engravings alluded to in the Sifrei Tzniuta, chapter 1, the appearance of which is that of a long snake that spreads forth to here and here, its tail in its mouth. Okay, it's not possible and maybe therefore not right to have brought this out if I'm not going to explain it. But there is in our tradition, in Sifrei Tzniuta, which is a part of the Zohar, an idea of a thing that the end goes back into the beginning, which is described as the tail of a snake in its mouth. Rabbi Kaplan in Sefer Yetzirah deals with this in a very interesting way in terms of ancient astrology called the Teli. I'm not really well versed in it enough to say anything meaningful. I'm asking you to forgive me for bringing things that I can't explain completely. Where this goes, though, is remember the street, Strauss, King George, etc. It's just something that's going to change names, but it's one thing. And when you know that it's one thing, it's all the different things that you had to go through to get to it might justify it. So the next paragraph is where he goes through all the different words of all the different street names as it changes, as it comes down from the highest level. First he goes up, 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 and then he comes all the way down. And I'm going to read it. This thing of dot that we're talking about, its sod, its mystery, is that of the avira ila'a, the upper atmosphere, avira delight pas, the atmosphere that is not graspable, which is from the Reish Delot Yedad, the unknowable mind, whose light is revealed in the head of Arich Anpin, as the Ari taught. And this itself is drawn from the Yisod of Adam Kadmon, which is the level above it, which inheres in it. For it is from there that the divine name called Ma begins. Please just don't even think about these things for the moment. But this itself is drawn from Akudim, which is above, which is the level of Sag, which itself is drawn from Ab, which is associated with the forehead of Adam Kadmon. This itself is drawn from high up and above, all the way up to the Kaaba, the blessed Ein Sof, which itself is drawn from the Makif of the Ein Sof that surrounds the entire Halal of the initial Tzimtzum. This is the Sod of the Mitkala, the scale, mentioned at the beginning of Tzniuta, which itself is Dat Pinimi, the Briach HaTichon, that begins above and stretches from one extremity to the other, from the highest to the lowest, for it goes forth and spreads in a straight line, from the Chai HaOlamim, Ein Sof Yitbarach, from the life of all the worlds, the Infinite One, blessed is his name, and it descends through all the universes and dimensions. Via this dot, all the worlds are blessed with ever increased light and blessing when they are worthy of experiencing its goodness. So he said Moshe Rabbeinu before, and now he gave all these in Leviathan and dot. Now he gave all these other names. At different levels, it's called different things. His point is, and nobody does this in Kabbalah but him, is how all of these are just different names for the same thing. So forget all the different names and all the different street names, that there's one artery that runs through the entire city of Jerusalem from one end to the other, which has different names, but it's one artery. And even when they're not worthy of its essence light, nevertheless, their entire essential life necessary for their existence is solely from Dat Panimi. The Creator is constantly giving life to every aspect of creation. The only difference is it is more mitzumsum, more constricted, and ne'elam me'od, extremely hidden. Worthy means you're allowed to see things in a more revealed way. Unworthy, it's there, but you're not aware. The same thing is said about the Mashiachs. When you're worthy, they're above ground and they're operative, and you can see them. You can see the two principles of creation at work, of history at work. Not worthy, they go underground. They work through seedy characters like Obamas and all kinds of people like that. That's also a messianic scenario unfolding. But it's not the way we'd like to, because we'd like to see it if we were worthy. But when we're not worthy, it's never inoperative. It's always going on, but it goes underground. So these ideas, again, are part and parcel of this mindset that we're talking about. Dat Pinimi is the life of the worlds. When we know that, then we know that our own Dat Pinimi, our own inner consciousness, the inner point of consciousness within us, is what we were born for, to become conscious, to have an inner world that's rich, an inner world that's not afraid of new frontiers, of growing, of admitting humility before the Creator of the world. An inner world that's not afraid of admitting that we don't know. And then when we don't know, we understand that we finally can start to begin to know. Whatever the case, the essence of all life is solely from there. It is through the revelation of its light that a person can see from one end of the world to the other. This is the light that has been stored away for the tzaddikim in the future world. The same Dat Pinimi is the Chai Ha'olamim Kulam, is the life of all the worlds, for it is the neshama of the neshama of all. It is the Shekhinah, the indwelling presence of his power, may his name be blessed, which is his Malchut, which is the mystery of the Etz Chaim, which is eternal life for all who grasp onto it. Now, in the Hebrew, as he's writing this, he's electrifying with these words. These words are, for him, they embody things, they embody frequencies. So he's writing these words very slowly. I'm reading them very fast, but he's writing them very slowly because he's waiting for every word to come to him as he writes it. He knows that he's only being allowed to write this because the time that he's living in is specific for being allowed to be saying things like this, and in the way that he's saying it. He lives at the same time at Einstein and the great scientists of the transition from the 19th to the 20th century. He's doing in Kabbalah what they were doing, moving from Newtonian to quantum Einsteinian model of the world, to an energetic form of understanding of the world. This is what the Zohar refers to in Toldot, that the goodness that is stored away for the tzaddikim in the future is none other than the Ziv HaShechina, the splendor of the Shechina. For in the future, the Holy One will rest his Shechina in their midst. This is the joy of the soul. This is the sod of the Leviathan of Atzilut, and of the Shor Habar, and the Tarnagol Habar, as will be explained. There are, however, traces or examples of these in the three lower universes of Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya. This is based on the principle that everything that exists in the upper worlds has its counterpart below, each world according to its level, and what is appropriate for it. And then there's this we don't have time to read it, but I have it here. I have to tear the pages. I didn't have time. I'll give this to you before you leave tonight. This is an example of what he just said, of how he pictures that every level of reality has its own uniqueness, but it's a lower copy of the level above it, but in a way that's appropriate for its level. The same with the level below it. It's a very interesting thing that he does, and this is an excellent example of the thought process that goes into the Leshem's writings. I did it, I translated it, and I have a number of them here, but there are 3 on a page, and I have to tear it. We'll get to that. Nothing I'm saying is that clear, but close your eyes and just go with me for a moment. So what we just said is that each world, according to its level and to what is appropriate for it, it is here that we come to understand the great banquet, the meals that will become accessible in Yomot HaMashiach, which touches on the simple emunah of Israel. These banquets will take place for the entire duration of the Yomot HaMashiach, page 12. They will be for the soul and for the body together, as per the Zohar and Midrash Ne'elam Toldot. For both the soul and the body will exist in the future. It'll still be a physical world, but it'll be highly energized. See there also on page 136a, Rabbi Yochanan said we should not contradict the emunah, rather establish it, for the Tanakh itself testifies about it. Meaning to say, the emunah of Am Yisrael is that there actually be physical meals. So we don't want to contradict that. We'll let Klal Yisrael believe that there'll be actual physical meals. Now he's going to modify this now. He says, for we know the emunah of the tzaddikim and their yearning. We know the emunah of the tzaddikim and their yearning is not for physical food, the Leshem is saying. As it is written, we will rejoice and be happy in you. Nagila ben smecha bach. Not in anything else but you. Godliness is what we will rejoice in. And it's not in food. This means that although the essential yearning of the tzaddikim is for the inner level, the sod, the mystery, which is the energy level, which is to experience the bliss of the Shekhinah, still the simple meaning of this tradition is also viable, as a number of verses attest. So the Leshem is trying to make sense of what the Zohar says, is that it'll be a simple thing called a meal, but don't only go there. It'll also be a very exalted thing, but the exalted thing will not knock out the other thing. They'll both be at the same time. I know it sounds hard. The essence is that these meals will last for the duration of Yomot HaMashiach. Why would they have to last so long? Because it's introducing a whole new level of understanding of why we're going to be eating these meals. It's in order to refine the physical body, or the physical world in general, to be able to enter Olam Haba with a body as well. The Jewish concept of body is that the body will be eternal because of the opportunity that it afforded the soul to be able to do what it needs to do in this world, which could not have been done. The soul has an eternal debt of gratitude to the body, and the body will therefore, in the resurrection, be energized by the soul immediately into a light body, and will accompany the soul in eternity. And the Kabbalah teaches that everything existed in Ein Sof, both the soul and the body, but in a very, 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 very refined form. Just like in an apple seed, you open it up, there's no apples there, right? It's a code. But Hashem made the world in such a way that then soul and body came down into this world. And as we go back and retrace our steps, the body will go with us. But it's the body that has done the refinement process that the soul is subjected into. This is exactly what the manna did in the desert. It refined their body with the light of his blessed Kedusha in order to establish the Torah in their hearts. However, even though in truth these meals will have a physical component, in accord with the simple faith of Klal Yisrael, still it is obvious that the quality of these meals will be greatly exalted beyond the quality of the food we presently eat. For from the outset, the Yemot HaMashiach will signal the nullification of the impurity, the infection, the zuhama of the physical, and its elevation from Asiyah to Yitzira, and from Yitzir to Bria. Until all the lower dimensions will be included and incorporated up into the higher dimensions. In the tikkun, the rectification of the Seder HaKlilut, which is the all-encompassing oneness of the higher worlds, of which we have spoken about. If so, all these levels will be greatly elevated, as well as the matter of eating itself, much more than they are now, even though at the same time, the simple level is also true. The Leshem very often dances between two polarities in order to give us both. We shouldn't think it's just one or the other. That's all he's doing here. We're almost at the end. Last paragraph. It could very well be that the Sod HaPinimi, the inner mystery of the Leviathan, which is the Ta'anug, the delight of the Noam, of the sweetness, of the Ziv Ha'elyon, of the supernal splendor that comes from Dat Ila'ah HaPinimi, that comes from higher inner consciousness. The Leviathan, which is the mystery of the higher consciousness of the world, that is revealed in the mystery of the Or Ein Sof. So again, it could very well be that the inner meaning of Leviathan is the incredible delight and joy of the sweetness of the light, right, of consciousness of the Or Ein Sof. The essence of this light will be revealed only in Olam Haba, that follows after Yemot HaMashiach, which is from the advent of the 7th millennium and onwards. At that time, all bodies will be transformed to souls, mamash. There'll be no more physical eating of the category of from below to above, but rather eating from above to below. He has a whole thing on this, regarding which the Gemara states there'll be no eating or drinking in Olam Haba. Rather, the tzaddikim will sit with their crowns in their head and experience the bliss of the Ziva Shechina. This is the meaning of they saw Elohim, and they ate and drank, according to Onkelos, and the mystery of eating from above to below. However, whatever the case, during the entire Yemot Mashiach, all these meals will be, as we said, with body and soul. For the ultimate sod of the Leviathan Apinimi, which is solely for the Neshamot, when bodies too will transform to souls, is reserved to the 7th millennium. For the ultimate sod of the Leviathan is reserved for the 7th millennium, which is the beginning of Chai Olam Haba. Okay, not fair to do that in any way, at any time. There's just a, please sit, please. Now, we've gone through the rapids. Just sit for a second with me. A lot of words. I ask you that you can, with your eyes closed, picture your own body. Sense, not picture, but sense your own body. Sense yourself, in yourself. You are a living consciousness within your physical frame. Your skeleton, especially your skull, within which is your brain, within which is the spinal cord, going down all the way into every part of your body through the nervous system, an incredible electrical system. We are much, much more than we know we are. Our prayer is to be worthy, to get past the words, to get past the metaphors. Perhaps it's very close. We don't know how close. To have said a Torah like this, just to babble it off, just read the words. We're asking that it has a spiritual force to it, a force that will help move creation in the direction of the goal. We'll come back here, we'll come back and go into our lives, normalcy. But when you try and do something like this, to break through to that higher level, to use those words, those ancient words, Or Ein Sof, Ziva Shechina, Olam Haba, Etz Chaim, the most precious things that we know exist, that we've been cut off from, and that we're asking for those vaults to be opened, those gifts to be given to us, not because we're anything special, but because the time is right, because the desire of mankind is for this. The desire of the Jewish people. We're wandering around looking for this, and we don't know how to find it. And certainly what I just read is not the final answer for anybody except the people in this room. Maybe something we got from it, but I'm not saying the words, the way I read them, anything. I'm saying that the attempt that we made to connect with the Dat Panimi through this maze of words. Atzilut and Bria, Yetzirah, see, they all exist in the same place. They're all right here. Just like a piece of paper is made of molecules, which are made of atoms, which are made of quarks, which are made of strings, which are made of substrings. They're all true. It's wherever you are on that spectrum, that's right. It's always relative to your perspective. So when you get into that higher state of consciousness, you may not have the words for it. In a sense, the Kabbalah gives us the words and the intellectual, conceptual framework to give these things a name. It's really a prophetic system. Etz Chaim is the name of a level of consciousness. Olam Haba is a level of consciousness that's available even before Olam Haba actually happens, because it's always there. You can enter into Olam Haba consciousness. And when you do that, you can make a difference in the way the world's energy is operating. Because you've gone inside. Please, Hashem, that we can, be just real, honest about it. Feel all of us together constitute one greater consciousness, one greater vessel for receiving higher consciousness. The idea of Am Yisrael is a total collective entity, a minyan, a class of people who come from millions of places, who've gone through millions of things, and we all come together. And we want. Those of us who are here, who are leaving, going, coming, we need your help so much. So we'll end with a song. Okay. Please join me if you can. Ki li shuata, ki vinu ko. Ki li shuata, ki vinu ko. Umetzapim lishua umetzapim Hividu ko yom ki Kivinu kol. Talk to God. Use these ideas of whatever you've gotten from them. You put us down in this world. You've given us everything we need except dot. And then when you want to give us dot, you give it to us in such a hard way. Please make it easier for us. Make it easier for everybody to have dot, to have connection, to know you inside, to see you in the eyes of our friends and our beloveds, to see you, to know that there's nothing but God. It's all happening inside of you, Hashem. And you've hidden it so well. El Mistater, you're a hidden God. But you're right here. We need you in our family relationships. We need you in our every level of our life in our world. Why does mankind find it so hard to invite God into our lives? So hard. At least in moments like this, maybe, when the channel is open. It's so obvious. Like somebody came to the Baal Shem. He wanted to ask him, I'm having so many doubts. I don't know what's going on. And he came on Friday. And the davening Friday was so special, but he couldn't get the Baal Shem Tov to look at him. And Saturday afternoon, and then Havdalah. And finally the Baal Shem Tov turns around and says, isn't it obvious that there's a God? And he said, at that moment, all of my doubts went away. Can't we have moments like that? We need a Baal Shem Tov. Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.